Welcome to the Den. Welcome back to the Den, everybody. I am Caden Martz, and this is episode 14 of the Den. We've made it pretty far, gotta say. I hope you all had a wonderful week. School is starting back up, work is starting to pick up, and of course, we got the podcast, so it's feeling pretty busy over here, but we have a great slate of playoff football to cover. This was a wonderful wild card weekend. Plenty of close games, plenty of entertaining ones, for sure, but I did get the vibe. It didn't really feel exactly like playoff football to me the whole time. I think I'm kind of just, nostalgia, used to the 2017, 2018 playoff graphics with like the color splurges on the screen and everything like that. But especially the Prime broadcast was kind of anytime you're watching an Amazon Prime game, it definitely won't feel like a playoff football environment. But the games certainly, they still held up. So why don't we get right into them? With the first one, where my Carolina Panthers hosted their first playoff game since 2015 against the Rams, but could not walk away with a victory. The Rams won 34-31. And in this game, at the beginning, it started how 99% of NFL fans would assume this game's going to go. Rams took, I think, a two-score lead. Carolina's offense was able to drive a little bit, just nowhere near, threatening to the Rams defense, which I had been hoping and was predicting that, because they looked a little streaky later in the season, we'd be able to beat them pretty relatively easily, But then Stafford's, I think he was like 8 completions in a row, missed a few, and then he like hurt his hand. Game completely changed after that. Bryce Young went 21 of 40, 264 yards, a touchdown, and a pick. I thought Bryce, you know, we're holding Bryce Young to a higher standard now. I think we have to. He's a playoff quarterback, even though his team's only 8-9. And, any quarterback went 21 of 40 with a pick and just one touchdown. He did have one on the ground as well. Isn't the most impressive, but after watching this guy for 3 years on this team, he does look like a new quarterback. And I said it earlier this season when he started to pick up his play and play a little better. I don't want to get my hopes up because as soon as I do that, he's going to start to play bad again. And yeah, he didn't get the win, but for what was around him, for Chuba Hubbard only having 46 yards, Rico Dowdle only having 9, like, we asked Bryce Young to do a lot in this game, and he really did. And putting 31 points against, a team that held probably the number one contender spot in the league for a long time, it's certainly enough to be excited for the future for me. Speaking of the ground game, this wasn't the Rams' run defense being so incredible. Our run game has struggled like crazy later in the season. So 13 carries and 46 yards is nowhere near surprising for me. I just question why Rico's, like, what happened? He was the guy. Like, he was the story in the NFL for about 2-3 weeks there when he had like back-to-back 200-yard games, and his drop to not even 10 yards in a playoff game is very confusing. But I don't know. I'm pretty sure his contract is up this year, or Chuba's is one of them. And I hope we don't pay a lot of money. That's just all I want. If we get both, cool. If we get one of them, cool. If we get none of them, we cannot spend money on a running back. We have too many positions that we got to worry about. Other than that, Jalen Coker was the Panthers' offense, when we get to 3rd and 10 because run game didn't work and any other weapon couldn't really step up like that. Jalen Coker was just ridiculous in this one, like absolutely ridiculous. He just destroyed his defensive back every time. And like, he did this kind of a little bit last year where he was, showed these crazy flashes, and he's not like some tremendous athlete. He's not the biggest guy. But he just it's kind of like JSN a little bit. I don't think he's quite as quick, but he's just got that, like, he can get open on his routes. And I really hope he continues this into next year. We did see this last year, though, and then he didn't really do much. Like, at some point, it kind of looked like he was like the wide receiver 5 behind like Jimmy Horn and, I don't know, Hunter Renfrow earlier this season. But this game, he certainly showed out. Tedero McMillan, 81 yards on 5 catches. Tommy Tremble had 3 catches, but it was really just T-Mac and Coker in this one. And in our offense, played like how you needed the offense to play in this one. And what you saw from them in the regular season gave you some hope for this one, especially in that matchup against the Rams, where this was reasonable. It was reasonable to ask for 30 points. But our defense surprised nobody. Matthew Stafford went 24-42, 304 yards, 3 touchdowns, and a pretty sketchy pick. Mike Jackson is going to be, or was this year's, like, Trayvon Diggs or Deron Bland. Like, he can get an interception. He'll make that play, but he's going to allow like a bunch of yards in between any turnovers. And so that is where Stafford's pick came from, I'm pretty sure. Matthew Stafford was lighting up our offense or our defense in the first half, but later in the game, Carolina did, I wouldn't even say it's as much Carolina making a change. Matthew Stafford, I bet he hurt his hand. I really do. Because he just wasn't playing as good. On the ground, I'm actually surprised Kyren Williams and Blake Corum. Kyren had 57 yards, Corum had 45. They barely eclipsed 100 yards on the ground after Puka got freaking 3 carries for 14 yards. And so, like, that was an aspect where the Rams probably would have wanted to get that lead and start running the ball out, and they really couldn't against this team. Puka Nacua did what Puka is going to do. 10 catches, 111 yards, and a touchdown. Devontae Adams, 5 catches, 72 yards. And when you've got, Roseboom over the middle and Trevin Wallace over the middle, and at safety, Nick Scott, you know, I'm not shocked in the slightest bit when I'm seeing these guys get absolutely torched. And, like, it's just no wonder, we lost this game when those are the names we put out there. Roseboom actually led our team in tackles, and he wasn't awful in this one. But the Rams' offensive talent, even when Stafford wasn't throwing the ball the best later in the game, just carried them enough. And our play of the week actually is going to go to Colby Parkinson, absolutely mossing Trayvon Diggs for the game-winning touchdown. That one hurt. I mean, I was sitting there in my living room. They were driving pretty good already, so I wasn't too shocked when they scored, but perfect ball. Colby Parkinson's just like probably 6 inches taller than Trevon Mayrig. So no shocker, but the receiving weapons stepped up for sure. Tyler Higbee even had 45 yards for their other tight end spot. But this was just a game, if you're a Rams fan, you probably would have wanted to be a little, not as close for sure if you want to have playoff success for the remainder of this year. But you did get the win. Carolina, you can just hope for the future. You can see Bryce Young playing like he is. See Jalen Coker, Tedero, McMillan. These guys, bright spots on the offense. Defense, you've got Derek Brown. Nick Gordon's playing solid this season. There's just plenty of areas you need to improve. You got to get better safeties, and you got to get better linebackers. You just can't throw those guys on tight ends and receivers and expect not to get torched like they did in this one. Next game to look at, this was the Bears-Packers game. And before I rewatched this one, I was watching it with my buddies, and it was 21-3, I think, at halftime. I gotta make sure. Yeah, I think it was 21-3 at halftime. So I went home. Packers were moving the ball kind of at will. They kind of got stopped every once in a while, but were just freely moving the ball against the Bears, and you kind of saw Caleb Williams not be able to make some incredible plays like he was able to earlier in the season. You saw their run game kind of fall off a cliff where that was their identity. But then I woke up, checked the score, 31-27. Chicago moves on in the playoffs. Caleb Williams, 24-48, 361 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 picks. And it's really interesting to see this Bears offense have to flip dynamics like that. This was a team led by the run, without a shadow of a doubt. Their game on Friday against the Eagles was the run game. It was Kyle Monangai and DeAndre Swift both going over 100 yards. When this one, Swift, 13 carries, 54 yards. Kyle Monangai, 8 carries, 27 yards. And it's like, their averages aren't like the worst thing ever. And so you would expect them to give more carries to these guys, but they just let Caleb sling it the whole time. And I commend Ben Johnson for not giving up on his game plan because it did work out. Just a very interesting shift for this team. Colston Loveland had an incredible week. 8 catches, 137 yards on 15 targets. And Colston Loveland is a guy who he's been like very efficient, but he hasn't been getting the most minutes or reps because you've got like Cole Maquette out there, or Cole Komet. Whoa, Cole Komet out there. But this game, I think he proved, he can produce on big volume. You can't produce when he's just getting fed the ball over and over again. And with an athlete like that, I would probably, predicted he would be a guy who's going to produce when you give him that much. DJ Moore, 6 catches, 64 yards, and a touchdown. Rome Odunze, 44 yards. Luther Burden, 42. DeAndre Swift, 38 out of the backfield. And later in this game, they just looked like this Bears team that everybody wants to love. Everybody's got this, the Bears energy in the locker room that, it's young guys. It's just an exciting team. And when you get an exciting team that can have drives like they did at the end of this game, when they were down, when the fans could stay the whole time in the stadium and cheer their team on when it was getting closer late. This Bears team, who knows? I think this is probably the hardest team to predict for the rest of the playoffs, in my opinion, because you just don't, you just don't know. Because you saw them in the beginning of this game just look not competitive, not even like really a playoff team, in all honesty. But they were able to come back in this one later in the game. For the Packers in this one, though, Jordan Love, 24-46, 323 yards, 4 touchdowns, no picks. I thought he played one of the better quarterback games of any quarterback from this wild card round. Just looks so poised, so confident. And Jordan Love isn't, a guy you hear too much is like this dangerous quarterback with the football. He's not always the safest, not making the smartest decisions. And you kind of saw that translate to the playoffs. But I think their real issues lied in their inability to run the football. Josh Jacobs, 19 carries, only 55 yards. Chris Brooks had 16. Jaden Reed had 14. Jordan Love had 11. So they did get some sporadic ones in there. But if you can't consistently run the football in the NFL, it's going to be hard for you to win any game, really. Romeo Dobbs, I don't know, 8 catches, 124 yards. He was also kind of like Jalen Coker in that other game, just tearing through this defense, getting open on these 15-yard outs, all this stuff. Matthew Golden, he was a big play guy in this one. He made 4 really crucial catches, 4 for 84 for him and a touchdown. Jaden Reed had 43 yards. Christian Watson had 36. And the Green Bay offense just was competitive. They were competent. They did pose a threat, but they just couldn't do it at the end of the game. And our stinker of the week is going to be Matt LaFleur for giving up that big of a lead. Next game to look at, this was the Bills going into Jacksonville and getting a 27-24 victory. And I think from watching this game, I would still say the Jags have more talent than this Bills team. You look at some of the guys they've lost on defense and who they're left with now. On offense, you just look at their weapons, and it's just a who's who of random names sometimes. But the inexperience in Jacksonville was evident, and it was key. It was the reason they lost this one. Absolutely no reason for Trevor Lawrence to have 30 passing attempts when Bishal Tootin and Travis Etienne only ran the ball 14 times. Travis Etienne, 6.7 yards per carry. Bishal Tootin, I don't even know his numbers, 4 carries for 51 yards. And it was so clear that Jacksonville was able to so easily run against this defense. That's what the story was going in this game. It's like Jacksonville's run game had kind of fallen off a cliff later in the season. But Bill's run defense is so poor, and it was working. And I understand a lot of those passes came at the end of the game when it was late game situation, but absolutely no reason why you don't have more carries from your 2 lead backs when they were working so well. Like, so well. Trevor Lawrence did go 18 of 30, 207 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 2 picks. Not the best Trevor Lawrence game. Also not the worst Trevor Lawrence game. I have to credit the Bills defense a good amount for this one because I didn't expect them to play as good as they did in this one. That truly was the reason they were able to win this game, is because Jacksonville's offense wasn't able to really get going like that. 24 points isn't terrible, but they just weren't able to consistently beat this team. There were plenty of drives where you're like, you need more than that. And really, they just needed to run the ball more. Parker Washington, 7 catches, 107 yards, and a touchdown. He continues to step into this number 1 receiver role. 6th-round pick out of Penn State from last year. Becomes a wide receiver 1. Who would know? Travis Etienne had 49 out of the backfield. Brian Thomas Jr. had a touchdown and 21 yards. But Jacoby Myers, only one catch, 12. Brenton Strange, only 9 yards, You kind of needed some of these guys. And obviously, some of this is Trevor Lawrence not being the most accurate in this one, but Jacoby Myers wasn't perfect. I mean, he had the drop at the end. I'm pretty sure that ended the game in the interception. Um, and I just don't understand why this team didn't run the ball more. In all honesty, Buffalo for their defense, it was their veteran guys, it was their old guys, and a lot of the time this is the kind of player that steps up in the playoffs. It was Matthew Milano, Shaq Thompson. He had an interception and led their team in tackles in this one. Greg Rousseau had a sack and 2 TFLs. It was these guys who've been in this environment, been playing in these with this team for a while, that stepped up the most. Um, the Jags, though they did lose this one, 24-27, it was still a very close game with a very competitive team every year in the playoffs. And next year, I've said this many times, but you're going to get Travis Hunter. You're going to have a bunch of young talent that's progressing. And this really could start like a multi-year playoff threat team in an AFC South that's going to be competitive for sure, but Colts could drop out again next year. And who knows, this team could become a potent threat in the playoffs. Don't be too discouraged by this loss in the wild card round for sure. Josh Allen, he got whooped up in this one. He was getting hit a lot. He did only have one sack, which credit to him for getting the ball away. But he will be our stud of the week. Through getting battered, injured, sat on, all of the above. 28 for 35, 273 yards, a touchdown, and no picks. And Josh Allen's ability to not have a run game where James Cook gets 15 carries, 46 yards. Have receivers like Tyrell Shavers and I think it was Gabe Davis, get hurt in the middle of this one. Gabe Davis actually is going to be out for a long time. And you're left with Khalil Shakir and Brandon Cooks, Keon Coleman. He just led this team. Like in the truest sense of that word, led this team. Was the reason they won this one. Was able to beat a consensus top 10 defense and like probably top 1 rushing defense in the league. Because he's been here and he knows this environment. Obviously, the Bills aren't shouldn't be and aren't seen as some playoff competitor every year. But Josh Allen was just able to beat this team. And again, the Jacksonville run defense was really good, but their passing defense just let up screen pass after a little short out route where they can get 5 extra yards that they shouldn't be. Their tackling was maybe the reason they lost this game for Jacksonville. I mean, you can't let Khalil Shakir get 12 catches for 82 yards on 12 targets. He didn't not catch one of those balls that went his way. And I don't have his yak up right now, but most of his yards are probably run after catch. But still an excellent performance from Buffalo in a tough game. Not really in a tough environment. I was just talking to somebody. I don't think Jacksonville is the most, NFL city. I think Jack should probably move to England soon, but that's for another day, another season. Let's move on to the next game. A very fun, interesting game. The San Francisco 49ers knock off the Super Bowl champion Eagles 23-19. And how fitting for them to score 23 points when their guy, Christian McCaffrey, didn't have the best game, but he obviously was a leader. Only 48 yards on the ground for him, but you got to expect that going against a team like Philly. He did have 66 yards through the air and 2 touchdowns, though. 2 clutch touchdowns for sure. And our Know My Name, Philip Lindsay Know My Name player of the week is going to be Demarcus Robinson. Obviously, it's hard to find a super underrated guy in the playoffs. Demarcus Robinson, former Florida receiver. 6 catches, 111 yards, and a touchdown. He's been on this team for a minute. I'm pretty sure he was involved in one of their Super Bowl runs. I think he was on the Chiefs too. He's got to be over 30 at least at this point, right? Yeah, 31. And he's just kind of been sticking around on this roster, not doing too much with, Jennings and, Jake Tonjes is there, George Kittle, Sky Moore kind of being in that room, Ricky Pearsall. And it's been kind of contested, but with the injuries they've had, he just was the guy to step up in this one and be super crucial to that. And again, despite the talent gap, you know, San Francisco's starting their fifth, sixth, and seventh string linebackers in this one. Um, San Francisco just out-hearted this Philly team, and you saw it all season. Philadelphia, with the immense amount of talent they have on this team, just wasn't able to win. A lot of this credit should go to Brock Purdy, 18 of 31, 262 yards, 2 touchdowns. He did also have 2 interceptions, though. He just this is a new, fresh version of Brock Purdy that's not just being a game manager, not just throwing your 5-yard slants, carrying out your RPOs, letting McCaffrey do everything. I mean, while he is letting McCaffrey do a lot, for sure, he ran the ball 9 times in this game. Got 24 yards off that, He made big plays. He elevated some, mediocre wide receivers that probably be wide receiver 3, 4 on other rosters to play like they are right now against the Eagles of all teams, And 18 of 31 against Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, Reed Blankenship, mad impressive and lots of respect to Brock Purdy. For the Eagles, though, you just won the Super Bowl, had Offensive Player of the Year, had even more talent come in the offseason. You got Jalen Phillips this season as well. How are you possibly going to enter where your team's supposed to be this dangerous, playoff upriser? And I thought they were. I thought this was one of the better Philly games I'd seen from this season. How do you lose this one versus the most injured team in the league? Jalen Hurts, 20 of 35, 168 yards, and a touchdown. This game was not really his fault, as much as I'd love to say that as a professional Jalen Hurts hater. It really wasn't his fault. Saquon, 26 carries, 106 yards. Tank Bigsby, I did ask for him to get some carries. He got 4 carries for 19 yards. Devonta Smith, 8 catches for 70 yards. Dallas Goedert was also pretty good in this one. He had 33 yards and a touchdown. But the drop issues, A.J. Brown can't walk away with only 25 yards on 7 targets in this one. Saquon Barkley, only 25 yards of the backfield on 6 targets in this one. All game, you just saw these names that are supposed to be premier pass catchers in the league not be able to catch the football. I understand it was windy, right? It was a hard environment, and San Francisco's defense isn't, pitiful. They still have good minds back there. They got Robert Saleh, coaching a good scheme, clearly, against this team. But it really felt like Philly just kind of lost this one on offense more than, the San Francisco defense beat them. Next game, we're going to take a look at here. This was the Patriots going against the Chargers. This game was certainly entertaining, even though the score, Patriots won 16-3. I'm still very impressed with their ability to make such an entertaining game. First point in this one, the offensive lines for both these teams, absolute disaster class. 11 total sacks in this game, and you saw we had seen the offensive line be an issue for these two squads before this year, but put on full display. Especially these aren't defenses you're looking at as, they're going to put up 5 or 6 sacks a game. No one's really saying that about either of these teams. I will credit the Chargers defense, especially in this one, holding this Patriots team to 9 points throughout most of the game and keeping LA in it. I was surprised by that for sure. I thought this would have been more of a high-scoring game if it was, but another game where poor Justin Herbert just didn't have that much help. I thought him and Drake May went 17 of 29, 268 yards, a touchdown and pick. Herbert went 19 of 31, 159 yards. I thought they played solid in their terrible situations, obviously, but May just had more help. And in a game where, Stephon Diggs, Travion Henderson, some of your traditional guys who are going to step up big for you aren't doing too much. It was Ramondre Stevenson, Hunter Henry, and Kayshon Boutte who were able to make the plays and get points on the board for the Patriots. Ramondre Stevenson, 10 carries, 53 yards. Also, credit to these quarterbacks for running. Justin Herbert and Drake May both led their teams respectively in rushing yards. Also for Ramondre Stevenson, 3 catches, 75 yards. And who would have seen it coming? All season, you're asking, get Ramondre Stevenson out of there. Put in Travion Henderson. Everybody's saying this, not just me. Although I definitely wish someone saying it a lot. He's the guy who stepped up for this team. Kayshon Boutte, 4 catches, 66 yards. Hunter Henry had a touchdown and 64 yards. It was really weird to watch this game and see those be the guys that stepped up. For LA, um, next year, because obviously you're going to have to look to that after only putting up 3 points in this game. They like to run the ball. They know that. They have Omarion Hampton, a former first-round pick. Like, you got to get a competent running game, and that's got to come through the O-line. And injuries are obviously sucky, but you have to be prepared in some way. I don't know if they have to sign backups or get better guards, but Bradley Bozeman being the best offensive lineman for this team just didn't cut it at all. Not at all at the end of the season. Kamani Vidal, 11 carries, 31 attempts, or 31 yards. Like, what is going on? I mean, that's been the norm recently for this team after their struggles with offensive line. Lad McConkey, only 32 yards. Orlando Gadsden, only 30 yards. Keenan Allen, only 25. Like, some things have to change around Justin Herbert because the way he's getting hit, it's going to be like a Joe Burrow situation soon, where his career is just getting thrown away and he's just getting hammered on. You saw him break his hand this year, but that was an injury that was kind of you could work around it. Next year, you might not get so lucky. It could be an ACL, meniscus, Achilles, something like that would not surprise me because even in this game, you saw the effects were wearing on him for sure. But a good win for the Patriots. Who knows about the rest of these playoffs? We are going to get into predicting those later in this episode, but it is still a win. And it was a pretty dominant one in the end because their defense played very well against this Chargers team. Last game to look at from this week, probably the worst game, and it is going to be our Game of Thrones game of the week. The Texans defeated the Steelers 30-6. I was at work watching most of this one. I only got to my buddy's house at the fourth quarter to watch the rest of it. And I thought the Steelers were, kind of posing a solid threat to the Texans. I think this one went into half at 6-7, with the Steelers only being down by 1. But their luck kind of ran out on defense. By luck, I really mean C.J. Stroud being stupid. Obviously, no hate to the kid, but 21 of 32, 250 yards, a touchdown, a pick, and 5 fumbles. They only lost 2 of them, right? But the 2 they lost were really important. And 5 fumbles is ridiculous. And to be dead honest, C.J. Stroud's been kind of playing a little sketchy later in the season, but you would hope he's going to step up in this environment. It just looked like, again, the playoffs were too big of an environment for him. And you've seen it. Last few years, Texans haven't been able to win these games in the playoffs. C.J. Stroud returning back to his old ways. Looking like the C.J. Stroud that, just can't play as good as he does in the regular season when it gets to playoff time. Woody Marks, 19 carries, 112 yards, and a touchdown. He was a little streaky earlier in this game, but later as their defense started to just turn insane, he stepped up. Nick Chubb had 48 yards on 10 attempts, also pretty good. Christian Kirk back on the Texans. When Nico Collins kind of dealing with injuries throughout this game, Christian Kirk goes 8 catches for 144 yards and a touchdown. I'm actually not sure who was guarding him. I was fairly impressed with, what's his name? Joey Porter Jr. this game. I thought he was pretty solid in coverage. I had not really been a Joey Porter Jr. guy my entire life. But this Nico Collins injury is not good. And this could be a death sentence for this team heading into the rest of the playoffs. And with their offense, for 3 quarters only being able to put 7 points on the board, maybe losing your starting receiver, I know he's questionable for next week, it's just so scary. Because without that threat of Nico Collins over the top and Dalton Schultz over the middle, teams are not going to be worried about this passing game as much without Nico Collins on the field. And that run game, I don't think that can be their bell cow, their reason they win these games. Kind of not really like the way they did this one. The defense was the reason they really won in this game. But it's just without Nico Collins, I don't know how much of a chance I give this team in the future. Obviously, their defense will keep them in any game. Their defense has maybe been the number 1 team in the league for defenses. Very impressive this season, but losing Nico Collins is certainly rough. For the Steelers, you finally got a season where it wasn't 8-9 or 9-8 or 9-8, excuse me. Went 10-7. Had Aaron Rodgers, Kenneth Gainwell had this crazy breakout season. Saw some flashes from DK and Darnell Washington. You had some excitement throughout the year that led you to lead your division and make this playoff spot at the 4 seed. But this was honestly an embarrassing performance, especially at the end. Their offense was just so incompetent. And you've seen them kind of manage some games in the past where they can put up as many points as they did against the Ravens. A defense that's able to stick out sometimes. But your leading receiver, DK Metcalf, 42 yards. Right behind him is Marquez Valdes-Scantling. Kenneth Gainwell, who couldn't have a game that he needed. 12 targets. He only caught 4 of them for 26 yards. And it's Adam Thielen. Freiermuth, who's like unbearably underutilized. I have this guy ranked as easily a top 10 tight end in the league, and he's like their tight end freaking 3 sometimes. Makes me angry. Jaylen Warren, 43 yards on the ground. Like, this is an offense of a bottom 10 team in the league, and you just can't expect to win these games in the playoffs against such a good defense like the Texans. I don't even know how they would have game planned to do anything different. I didn't think Aaron Rodgers was awful. He had 17 attempts, or 33 attempts, 17 completions, 146 yards, and an interception. This one, no touchdowns. But it's the Texans defense and a very mediocre offense. Like, who's really that surprised by this result in this one? But the Texans do move on. And this is a nice segue to the final thing we're going to be doing for this episode. We're going to be predicting the rest of the playoffs. We'll start with the AFC, I guess. And the next game that's going to happen, it's going to be Broncos versus Bills in Denver. And I have not been a Broncos guy. I've been very open of my disliking of the Broncos, but I'm going to make sure to give a fair assessment in this one. I think for the Broncos, you have Bo Nix, who's been playing best season so far of his career. He's playing like a borderline top 10 quarterback. But I got to be honest. You're going against this Buffalo team who is just able to slow down a solid Jags offense with very comparable, probably better weapons than this Broncos team. And if the Jags, through being able to beat that poor run defense pretty well with Travis Etienne and Baishal Tutin, if that wasn't enough to get a win, I don't think RJ Harvey's going to cut it for this team. I really don't see the Broncos being able to run the ball that well against this team. And when you've got Courtland Sutton and I forget some of their other receivers, it's just they've been so inconsistent this year. I cannot really see this Broncos offense full of young talent, a rookie running back, second-year quarterback, being able to step up in this kind of playoff environment. For the Bills, you are going against one of the better defenses, maybe the best defense in the league. And are you going to be able to, like you did in that Jags game, continuously pose a threat? If this was the regular season, I don't know how confident I would be. But because of how we saw Josh Allen play in the last game and how we saw, Khalil Shakir and Tyrell Shavers and these guys, Brandon Cooks, how we saw these, somewhat veteran presences step up, I'm going to have to give this one to the Bills. My official score prediction is going to be Bills 24, Broncos 14, and this really just comes down to I don't believe in this Broncos offense and their weapons to help Bo Nix at all. And if Buffalo defense can play like they have partially this year, where they are not just a defense to be walked all over, it's going to be enough to stop this Broncos team. Next game in the AFC to look at, Patriots-Texans. We just talked a lot about the Texans. But for this game, the real story is going to be this Patriots offense who could only put 16 up against the Chargers, and that required a late touchdown. How are they going to fare against this Texans defense? I'll tell you, it's not going to be well. It's not going to be great. You're going to know that. But I think this is going to come down to New England. While they will struggle versus the Patriots or the Texans defense, you still have Drake May, who's probably going to win MVP this season. You've got Ramondre and Travion Henderson, who either or has been able to step up. Recently it's looked more like Ramondre. Um, and while the Steelers only put up 6 points, there were many times in that game where they had chances to capitalize, where they dropped a football to get into field goal range or near the end zone. I mean, they had, I think, 2 or 3 red zone appearances in that game. They just couldn't capitalize. And I don't see Drake May just not being able to come through on those opportunities. For the Texans offense and CJ Stroud, I have to predict they're going to fall off a cliff again because it's the playoffs and not be able to put up nearly 30 points against this New England team. So my official prediction is going to be New England 20, Houston 17 in a close one for sure because New England's offense isn't going to be able to get going like you'd probably imagine. I just don't see Houston's defense being able to beat this system, wonderful system in New England, of kind of just a bunch of guys playing defense. We'll move on to the AFC Championship then. This will be their third matchup of the season. Bills versus Patriots to go to the Super Bowl. They split the series in the regular season, but like I said before, I'm going to have to go with the experience and give Buffalo the win. My official score prediction is going to be 27-17. And again, this just comes down to Buffalo's defensive veterans being able to step up in these big moments and stop Stephon Diggs and Efton Chisholm and Hunter Henry. These just aren't the names I think are going to be able to beat what is realistically a pretty solid unit in Buffalo defense. And Josh Allen is just going to be too much. Again, when you've got Gonzo, right? You've got Christian Gonzalez. But other than that, you've got Robert Spillane and Christian Barmore. I don't see those names being able to stop Josh Allen, realistically. We'll move on to the defense, or the NFC now. First game we'll look at real quick. Seattle Seahawks versus 49ers. I don't see this game going any different than the Week 18 matchup. My official prediction is going to be Seattle 16, Seattle 17, San Francisco 6. But they're just too injured. San Francisco is just too injured in this one. And you already saw Seattle be able to choose between their run game or JSN or anything like that. They're just going to have their choice of how they want to beat the San Francisco defense, which is clearly beatable even by an Eagles offense that's been extremely underwhelming this season. But Seattle's defense isn't going to let up 23 points. They're not going to let Demarcus Robinson put up 111 yards. And Brock Purdy's really, really going to get tested. And I don't think he's going to do too bad against this team like he did in the other one, but he won't be able to do enough. Probably the most exciting game, one I'm super, super excited for next week. Bears versus Rams. This is easily the hardest one for me. Not a question in my mind. This is a tough, tough game to predict. Because you got the Rams, who just won 34-31, had that clutch factor in the end of the game, but they also let that game get way too close with the Panthers. And then on the other side, you've got the Bears, who barely won 31-27 after going down 3 scores to the Packers without Micah Parsons. And I'm very intrigued by this one. I think you could see a kind of schlockfest, kind of 2 bad performances going against each other. You could also see 2 tremendous performances go against each other. And I'd love to see both those games for sure. But I'm going to end up giving this one to the Bears. And all it comes down to is just that young team, high energy, want to root for them. They're going to be at home. They're going to be in Chicago. Matthew Stafford is certainly going to get tested by a good Bears unit. And Stafford has been turnover prone late in the season. If there's one thing the Bears defense can do, it's get turnovers against anybody. And for the Bears offense, I think they will struggle at the beginning of this game. You can easily see that happening. I think the Bears run game won't exactly get going. I don't think Caleb Williams is going to have a 4-touchdown, no-pick performance. It'll probably look more like 3 touchdowns, 2 picks or something like that. But I think he's going to do enough late in this game to win the game 35-31 in a comeback victory. That'll bring us to our NFC Championship of the Seahawks in Seattle going against the Bears. And unfortunately for that young, hype team and the Bears, I don't think they're going to get anything on Seattle in this one. Seattle's just been way too dominant this season. That defense is going to be able to, I can confidently say, going to be able to hold Chicago's offense, with their scrappy guys, Colston Loveland, DJ Moore. They're just not going to be able to get past guys like Devon Witherspoon, Kobe Bryant, there's Leonard Williams, plenty of names on that Seattle defense. And I just don't see, this young team who's not I would confidently say they're not really ready for a number one seed in an NFC championship quite yet. But to their credit, to Ben Johnson's credit, getting to the NFC championship is certainly an impressive feat. The final game we're going to be looking at for this season in the Super Bowl, we've got Seattle versus Buffalo in San Francisco, I'm pretty sure. And man, would this game be exciting. Because I just know if Buffalo can make the Super Bowl, I don't think Josh Allen's going to throw away that opportunity. He wouldn't just, you know, we've seen that quarterback have some iffy games, but it's far fewer than what you've seen from some bad playoff performing quarterbacks. Lamar has had plenty of games where he didn't step up as much, and you've seen some older guys like Aaron Rodgers have some mediocre performances in the playoffs. You don't really see Josh Allen be the problem for this Buffalo team. Now, what will be a problem for this Buffalo team is their defense. I think that Sam Darnold, maybe in that Chicago game, might have a few turnovers, heading to the Super Bowl, and there'll be some questions with Sam Darnold. But they're not going to need him to do too much. All you're going to need from Sam Darnold is an ability to hand off the ball, an ability to throw to JSN, and there's not a single guy on that Buffalo roster that can hold Jackson Smith and Jigba. Not a question in my mind. I mean, who are you going to even line up against him? Cole Bishop? I think that's their cornerback's name. It's just not going to be enough defensively for the Bills. Offensively, I think Josh Allen's going to be clutch. He's going to be huge. He's going to get them some points. But Josh Allen can only do so much. And James Cook, don't see him being able to run against this team in Seattle, who's been able to stop almost every single team going against them, except the Rams when they put up 37 points. And their offense was able to step up in that game. So my official Super Bowl prediction, Super Bowl champions, probably not the hottest take, is going to be the Seattle Seahawks beating the Bills 20-13 in the bowl. Thank you guys for watching this one. Fun episode of film. Remember, like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube stuff. If you got stuff you want me to cover, again, after this week, we're going to be out of football really to talk about. We'll have 4 games next week we can talk about. So we'll probably move on to some college basketball stuff in there as well, or maybe some off-season things we can look at. But love you guys. Remember, Jesus loves you. You're loved by many people in your life, and have a great week.